Welcome to the Missouri Wind and Solar Podcast. I'm your host, Wes Shank, coming to you from our store in Seymour, Missouri. Each week with my co-host and Missouri Wind and Solar's General Manager, David McDaris, we discuss the latest on self-reliant energy. Check out our additional educational information, including dates for our hands-on workshops conducted in Seymour, on our website, windandsolar.com. Thank you for listening to our podcast, and if you haven't already done so, please consider subscribing. Okay, we've been off for a while. We've been bad, and shame on us. Actually, it's your fault, David, so I don't feel so bad. I know it's your fault. We have taken the holiday season too much to heart, and we haven't been on top of the podcast like we should. I'm going to say my problem has been building the house. I don't know what your problem is. I think you're building the house. You're just a slacker, I think is what your problem is. So anyway, we want to talk today. I'm going to go with interesting. It's interesting because it got fixed rather than it was catastrophic because it didn't. But we had an interesting situation over at the house. I know I've probably said it. Probably everybody's tired of hearing it, but we are building off grid. House is about done. We've got two arrays out there that are actively producing, doing a great job and everything. But we had an interesting situation one night where the system shut down. We're not living over there yet, so we don't know what happened. But we do know really bad storm came through. Not sure what happened, but in the process of talking with Sam about it and what was going on, he talked to me about we needed to wake up the batteries. And we're using lithiums, and we're actually using what I would call lithium cells because they're not it's not like the
prismatic cells.
Yeah, it's not like the Simplify because we actually have a standalone BMS system a battery management system for it. So it's not like a battery, but it's the cells and kind of make the whole thing. And he was talking about waking it up, and I thought that's kind of a curious thing to do. Why do you wake something up? How does it go to sleep? What kind of happened there? And so let's talk about that. As you and I both know, we're selling lithium's hand over fist anymore. Lead acid has all but gone the way of the dinosaur. Do you even remember the last time we sold?
It's getting fewer and fewer. Every sale is just fewer and fewer. So it's just
very much an oddity. The AGMs, even
same thing. Yeah.
We sell some, but really everything's going the way of lithium. And so this is as I understand it, this is a kind of a unique quality, if you will.
Yeah, this is unique to lithium versus AGM.
So tell me what happens? Why are they going to sleep? Why are we waking them up?
You said it earlier in your deal when you were talking about your battery management system. That's exactly what they're designed to do because of that system. You don't see a battery management system on flooded lead acid or really any aqueous system. You don't see.
Okay, so let's back up then. So it sounds like the first thing we need to discuss is what is a battery management system, or we're going to shorthandle it BMS. What's a BMS?
A BMS is it's a computer with a bunch of electrodes that's connected to all your cells of your battery. You may have 16 or actually 32 leads running away from your, which is negative and positive, and it all runs back to this little computer, this computer which is called the BMS. And it's constantly monitoring the batteries, seeing at what level each of these batteries is at. So
each one of these cells,
yes, each one of these cells that make up the battery. So, for instance, in case of the new house, we're a 48 volt system. Well, these prismatic cells that we're using are 3.2 volts. So we had to string together 16 of these, and they basically not really a line, but we did them in a way that little blocks, So
it was certainly a Tetris game trying to figure out how to get them all.
So you had to arrange all these so all your leads would fit. So
and all the leads were the same length.
Yes, because they have to all be the same length. If not, they won't read properly back to the BMS. Just the same way that you won't charge properly if you have, say, you had 8 flooded lead acid batteries together, and you had 4 that were 2 foot long joining the batteries together, and 4 that were 6 inches long. They need to be equal length. In the same way with your BMS leads going off to your individual cells, they need to be And so some of them are going to be a lot longer than the other ones are going to be, and some of them will be shorter.
So one of the things that was and is a challenge with doing that, from actually having done it or being instructed how to do it by Sam, is that you've got those 16 batteries, and basically they have to be wired in this great big loop. Right. I mean, so seriously, if you were sitting, if you had just tons of space and you just were sitting them out on a floor in an empty garage or something, you could have a great big circle where they were all wired in series, and you just created this great big loop, and you had the two, the one battery at the end that you were connecting to, and you had all the rest of them logged in a big series. But the challenge you got with that was that, and we use a daily BMS. We sell them here at the store. Right. Is you've got all those leads, and for whatever reason, daily is like, you've got the tiniest, what is the gauge wire? It's got to be something. Gauge, I mean, whatever gauge wire is the smallest gauge in the world, they've got on that lead. And, if you need 24 inches, I rest assured you have 12 inches on that. Right. And so you've got to bring all those together and then touch each one of those batteries with that lead simultaneously while not electrocuting yourself across.
Right. Yeah, that's exactly right.
So it's a challenge to put those together. And of course, you typically don't have a full garage floor to set this out on. I mean, your space is always going to be an issue, so you've got to put that together. But so like you're saying, we had that daily BMS. It was a 48 volt BMS. You're running these little leads all over, creation, trying to wire it together. But my question coming back, even having done that, is, okay, so coming off of your BMS, you've got all those little leads, right? But then you only have the two main leads from the BMS going to your positive and negative. What is it even doing with, say, cell number 7? So all you've got is that one little lead going off over there.
Yeah, that is the case. I mean, you just had the one little lead going off over there. So it is charging. But as it goes across it, the BMS knows that it's supposed to give more energy to that cell. It's like in a vehicle, if your vehicle starts sensing that
traction control or something.
Traction control is the best one. That the right rear wheel is slipping, it's going to send more. It's going to take power away from that because there's no need for it. I mean, if it's slipping, there's no need to give that power, and it'll give power maybe to the left front wheel. So it will, and especially in an all-wheel drive vehicle. So that way, it takes that energy instead of just burning it off and letting it slip. It brings it on and actually propels the car on forward.
Well, so how does it know cell 7, or are you assuming that your cells are all created equal in this series?
Yes, that's the first thing is it's assuming that all cells are created equal. And let's say that you do like you did and buy prismatic cells. That's the very first thing you have to do is make sure that your cells are, within just, micro voltage of each other. If you get a cell that's resting at 2.9 volts and everything else is rushing at 3.2 volts, you don't want to add that into the system. If you can't get that to be at 3.2 volts and hold 3.2 volts, you're going to bring your whole system down.
So the BMS in this case is really just monitoring. It can't say magically send some extra to number 7,
right?
But number 9 is a little over, so take a little. It's just looking at it and saying,
sensing it. And so if any one of them starts to fail, instead of letting it draw the whole thing down, it will say, nope, we're going to shut this thing off now, because even though we want them to be exactly perfect, they're never going to be. They're just like people. Everyone is going to be unique. They may be very, very close, but they're going to be unique.
Okay. So let's get back to, I kind of took us surprisingly enough for us. We went down a rabbit hole. Okay. So I've got 5 different, I'm going to say batteries,
right,
which have 16 different cells in each one of them. Okay. So I've got, let's just say one of the batteries, for some unknown reason, drops below the voltage that it needs to be, what's the BMS going to do?
It's going to shut the unit down.
So what does that mean?
So what it's going to do is it's going to put it into basically sleep mode, like your computer would go into.
Okay, so I've got my 16 little teeny weeny wires running out to all of my cells, and I've got my two big honking. I mean, those things got to be what, number fours or something like that are actually running the BMS. So is the BMS now turning those two number fours off? Is that what it's doing?
Yes. It's killing all power away from into or away from the unit.
Okay. So that gateway is shut down.
Right.
And it's saying, okay, don't do anything else with this. Shut it off. All right. So now we talk about going to sleep. So what does going to sleep mean on these cells?
So going to sleep only means that there will be no incoming voltage going to the cells or outgoing voltage away from the cells. So there'll be no transfer of amperage going into or out of the cell.
Okay. So, but I bet you money if you laid a socket wrench across a positive and negative on one of those, it'll light up your life.
That's been a dead short. That's something totally different. I mean, when we're hooking up, that's no different than your car battery.
Okay, so are you waking up the batteries or are you waking up the BMS?
You're waking up the BMS. You're telling the BMS. Hey,
okay, so there's
where what you're doing is telling the BMS. The cells are going to have energy in them. That's the number one thing BMS does is instead of being able to take it too far down and destroy the cell, it's saying, no, we're going to tell the BMS. The BMS is going to go to sleep. It's going to basically go in there again. The BMS is just a computer. I mean, that's really what it is.
Right.
And so the computer is going to go to sleep mode. You've got to wake that computer up out of sleep mode. On a computer that we use day in and day out, you hit enter, you hit a button, and it wakes it up. Well, this thing says you can't just hit a button. You've got to physically, because you've already got down to the exact level that we're wanting to be asleep at. The voltage is, so now that I've got to increase that voltage just instantaneously, but very, very short period of time.
So on my system, what are we looking at? So it's a 48 volt system. So what are we looking at that it's going to say go sleep?
Usually it's going to be around about 49.5 volts.
Okay. So the batteries, sun's not shining, whatever, gets to 49.5.
Right.
The BMS
says
kills the two big number 4 wires, turns them off. And so my question coming back, and I didn't really understand this with Sam when we were talking about it, is there's still power.
Still energy in the batteries.
Still energy in the batteries. I mean, you got not enough 16 leads going out there. So why, when we were talking, Sam was telling, it's okay to wake this up. We may need a battery. We may need a solar panel. We could take a solar panel and bring the leads in and pop it a little bit. Why can't it wake itself up? Why can't you tell it to wake itself up from the batteries?
Because the batteries, there again, are at that, I always go back to if you said, I don't want the valve to open, if once it gets to 20 gallons in the 55-gallon drum, I don't want any more to go out of that. That's the minimum. And until you put a little bit, I'm talking a cup of water into that barrel, the valve will not open. It says, no, I am not opening for any reason.
Okay. So I'm getting an understanding, right? Yeah. I'm not arguing with you. But okay, so you and I both know, with the flashlight, the light goes off, turn it off a minute. Wait a minute. Turn it back on. You may get a flicker.
But that's what the BMS, that's the computer program in the BMS is telling it. Until something external tells us to wake up, until there's an external wake up. Now, there were certain batteries on the market for a while. Trojan had one. They actually discontinued it, but it actually had a button that you could push.
Well, and doesn't the Simplify do that?
They've got a breaker on it, but they don't have a
button. I knew they had a button.
But they had a button that you could push and basically make it give a little jump. So it would jump. It would tell the BMS to, hey, come back on. We got sunlight back out. We're ready to charge.
All right, so let's explore that. So you've said, and I believe you, that the BMS has just said ain't gonna do it from the batteries. The batteries are dead.
Right.
No way, Jose. Okay, so now to wake it up, what are you looking at? So can I come in there with 2 D-cell batteries and an alligator clip and come in there and poke it, or what are we looking for?
You've got to exceed battery voltage. So let's say yours is 48 volt. You've got to bring something in that's capable of giving over 48 volt. So if it's 49.5 where it's shutting off at, then you got to have something that gives it 49.6.
Okay.
You have to basically have either another battery or a battery charger. There's lots of not lots of them, but there's some battery chargers on the market now. Ames makes one that's a 36 or 48 volt. It's a great one to have, like in your system. It's a great one to have around because you can actually have it plugged into like a generator. You'd have to have a generator to use this, by the way.
Right.
But you can plug it into the generator, and it will give 48 volt. A lot of chargers do not do 48 volt.
Okay. So in my case, and again, Sam and I were talking, I keep 4 of those Mission 420s in the garage. I mean, I have them if something happens. I got replacements ready to throw up there. So he was saying, felt like one of those could probably.
It probably would take 2.
Probably take 2.
Probably take 2 because you might get away with 1 because their voltage is pretty high on those Missions that you have, the 420s. The voltage is going to be around like 48.9 or something like that. So if the battery, depends on where the battery is set, you might get away with 1. Worst case scenario, you put 2 out there, you put them in series, and you have your positive negative lead. And we're not talking need to have these on a rack or anything. I'm talking these
just laying out in the sun.
Sunlight.
Right. And so if I'd laid them out in the sun, I had those 2 in series.
Right.
I brought my positive negative in, and I put them on the batteries, just straight on the battery.
Straight on the batteries. Boom. It's just like jump starting a car. I mean, it's just dunk.
Tack them on there and
tack
then
them on. It's just like that. The BMS says, okay, yep, I'm awake, Yeah.
And then as long as there's sunshine energizing through through the FM100 and everything.
Correct.
But because even if there is power coming in through the FM100, it's saying nope.
Yeah, the FM100 is in resting mode. When the batteries are not taking in energy, that's going to send your classic or your FM100 or whatever MPPT charge controller you're using. It would set in resting mode as well. So it would just be resting and saying, I've got energy here, but I have nowhere to put it. I mean, you might see, 130 incoming volts, but that has nowhere to put it because the batteries are saying, I'm not accepting right now. I'm asleep. I'm not accepting. And so as soon as that comes on, it will immediately fall out of resting mode and go right into bulk charging because at that point, if it's got that low, it definitely is going to go into bulk charging. And you'll start seeing that energy then all of a sudden start flowing back through that controller right down in your battery bank. So what you don't want to do is say it's 9 o'clock at night, the sun's down, and you say, oh, I'm going to go wake my batteries back up again. They went to sleep for some reason. You went and seen the voltage and you've determined the voltage is down on them, and you do not want to try to wake those things back up if you don't have an incoming charge.
Right. This is going to wake up and go right back to sleep, right?
It's going to go right back to sleep. If you want to put a generator on them, that's fine. There again, that Ames has got that unit, that Con 120. It's a 36 or 48 volt, 30 amp or 25 amp charger. So if you go start the generator, you can come in, you can pop it, wake it up, and then leave that connected and start charging that battery.
So let me ask you this: in my scenario, where I've got 48 volt system, and I got 5 of those batteries. Would it not be smart for me to have even if I just had a 48 volt battery in the mechanical room, just to wake those up?
Yeah, I mean, versus going out and have to start a generator and rely on a generator to start every time, or have to go out and
get panels and
set them out, and run your wires back in, and if you're going to do that and have to set panels out every time to do that.
Of course, you don't want to do. It's not going to happen that often.
Right.
You think.
One of 2 things is I would either have them mounted. I mean, I would just go ahead and mount them and leave the leads basically capped off inside or disconnected, or I would at least have the wires ran there all the time. In the case like you just said, this shouldn't be happening this should be
really
very, very
never happen. Really,
yeah. That's the best case. It never happens. But if it does happen, and because lithiums are so new to the market, it's going to happen more often at the beginning until people learn these. And I think as these lithiums come along, you will actually see that they will probably go ahead and put an extra cell in there that's just a deemed a 48-volt cell that you will
punch
be able to punch a button, and it will give.
Well, so is there what's my cheapest option to have a battery?
The cheapest option is just to have a battery. Just
which one? So what's the?
Just me personally, I would just have a flooded lead acid battery, just some kind of small flooded lead acid battery that's capable of without having to do 4 of them in series.
Right. So what do we got? What's my option?
Unfortunately, there's not a lot of options in flooded lead acid. 4 12-volt batteries, but you can do 4 small lawnmower batteries. It doesn't matter, just as small as 12 volts.
Is there one of our AGMs that would?
AGM's still 12 volt. They're all monoblock 12 volts. So really the only battery you're seeing on the market that's 48 volt and 30 and 24 lithium. Volt is lithium. I mean, that's all, and you don't want to buy another lithium to turn around and have to, wake up a lithium. You know what I mean? That's because in that situation, you will wind up being in trouble, because if you ever run that one down to where its BMS shut off, now then you're really stuck, because now you're back to unhooking panels away from it and or getting a charger. Best case scenario, you have just 4 small. I mean, when I say lawnmower batteries, I mean just the small.
Yeah, I get that. I mean, even so, like those. I mean, you have those old lantern batteries. Is that? I mean, is all you're looking is to get over 48?
Yeah. If you could take the little 6 volt, that goes in your old flashlight. You could actually take. I want to say that D cell batteries are 3.2 volt. I think they're 3.2 volt.
Just run a bunch of those together.
You can just series them together. I mean, you can make your, the crowd we're talking to right now is a pretty innovative crowd, I think. And so, anything you can do to get up to 48 volt. Actually, I would want to get up about 52 volts. So when you hit it, I mean,
and it's one time. It doesn't even need to be on there for like.
Yeah, and that's what Trojan had done. And they didn't have a bunch of D cell batteries in there, by the way, or A cell batteries or AA. What they had was capacitors. It was
a capacitor. That's what I was sitting here thinking. It sounded like a great job for a capacitor.
That's exactly what they had in there. And the capacitor, for whatever reason, was failing in that. And it wasn't blowing up. It just was failing. And so they couldn't get it to restart. They had no restart mechanism at that, because they designed it for that to be the restart mechanism. And you couldn't even shock it awake. You had to.
Really?
Yeah. And so that's why.
I mean, and what were they trying to do it like automatically, or were they?
No, you had to punch. You had to push the button. You just pushed the button.
Pushed the button and it didn't work.
But the capacitor was failing, and they couldn't get a capacitor, and it was going to be a total new redesign. They said, we're going to go back to the drawing board with this whole thing.
I mean, because that's like, I mean, that isn't that all that's in in your grill?
Oh, it is. It's 100% all in the grill. Yep.
I mean,
capacitors, yeah. So, and that's that's the future of it. I mean, Simplify will one day be that way. They'll have just a set of capacitors in there that get charged along with the battery.
Just sitting there.
So it's just totally always
maintaining
charged.
State.
Right. And, capacitors are extremely good at remembering and holding the voltage that they're supposed to. I mean, even versus a battery, I mean.
This may be bring Wyatt in here.
Yeah. So, and we even looked at, on many things we've used capacitors, especially in testing purposes. We use capacitors. So
okay. All right. So did I ask all the right?
I think so. You just need to number one thing, and then the other thing on lithiums. I mean, like I said, they're kind of new on the market. They're not brand new by any means, but they're really taking market share now.
Actually, I do have one more question. So on my system, where I have 5 batteries, is waking one up going to wake the others up, or do I have to wake?
It depends on if all 5 shut down, you have to wake all 5 up. You have to go and tell all 5 to wake up.
So starting the one,
right? And you can't have one shut down and the other 4 not,
because you've got to start it behind the BMS.
Right.
So you got to start it on the battery side of the BMS.
Right.
Okay, that makes sense. So,
yep.
So even if the rest of your stuff, but at least then you've got to.
Yeah.
And you could jump her over.
Yeah, you can jump her. Yeah, at that point you can jump her off the other ones, And sometimes they will. We'll wake the rest of them up. More than likely, you're going to have to go through and wake them all up, though. So.
And just as a closing note, that was not what happened on my situation. It did wake everything back.
The biggest deal there is if you have multiple, like you do, you have the combiner box. You got the lithium combiner box,
right?
And so it's got the big bus bars. So all 5 of your big number 4s are all on a positive side in the combiner box, and all of yours are on the negative side in the combiner box. So you have 5 big wires that are black running to the negative side, and you have the 5 big red ones running to the positive side. You can go and wake up all 5 by energizing that bus bar, that combiner box. You can go energize that combiner box, and it sends that signal down to all 5 batteries at one time. It says, wake up, and everybody wakes up at one time. That's one of the real advantages, because lithiums are always used with combiner box. If you're using multiple parallel units, so we're increasing our amperage and not our voltage, because like Simplify, they're voltage specific. They're going to be either 24 or 48 volt or 12. You can buy 12, but it's pretty rare. But they're going to be voltage specific already. They're going to be already made that. So everything that you're doing is parallel circuit. You're not seriesing any of these together.
Right.
You're parallel. So you're doing that through that lithium combiner box.
Okay.
And so you can wake it up just off that lithium combiner box. You don't actually have to go down and touch a battery or post or anything. You can just do it off the combiner box.
Okay. So. All right. Well, I hope this gave everybody some good feels on how and why those batteries go to sleep. And thanks for tuning in today. Thank you for downloading and listening to the podcast today. If you have a question you'd like to hear us discuss on the podcast, or just want to say hello, email us at radio@windandsolar.com. As always, check out our store at windandsolar.com and buy some stuff. Your financial support underwrites our educational outreach, like the podcast, YouTube channel, and local STEM collaboration. It also keeps Lucy and her doggy chicken treats. Thanks again for listening.